the internal workings and structure of something, what its different components are, how the components fit together, what materials those components are made. It uses as an example the Anatomy by Machiavelli about the art of war. That's the secondary use of the term anatomy. And that's how I'm using the term anatomy of anarthas. The Sanskrit term artha has the following directional type of meanings. Something wanted, something valued, something important, a goal or a gain, something like that. So anartha is the opposite, something unwanted. And something unwanted within the heart is what the topic is. So something that blocks spiritual power, like clouds block the heat and the light of the sun, depending upon the density of the cloud. The heat of the sun or the light of the sun will be blocked. So similarly, when one takes up spiritual activity, one may not experience the full potency of that spiritual activity because of anarthas in the heart, something unwanted within the heart. So there's a stage given by our acharyas called anartha nivritti, or eradication of those unwanted things in the heart. And we've been discussing that topic in general, and where anarthas arise from, and there's different categories of where they arise from, but the biggest one that we've been focusing upon is offenses. And when offenses are made, anarthas arise in the heart, and then those things that are spiritual, one cannot see them as spiritual. Bhagavan, bhakti, the bhakta, the devotee of the Lord, or even the spirit soul, chitkana, the spark of life within. One doesn't see those things that are spiritual in this world as they are, as they properly should be seen. So that's the functional effect, a functional definition of anartha. Then we discussed in part 3, for some reason this is not advancing, and I don't know why. It might be the battery is kaput, so I'll do it manually for now. So a slight review of part 3 is the other morning, Wednesday morning, we discussed what are the results or psychological manifestations that are evidence that some aparad, some offense has been committed. And there were 5 in number, and they're sequential. So this is just review. Results of offenses. There are faults such as crookedness, lack of faith, failure to remain steady in worshiping the Lord, becoming absorbed in material objects, laxity in performing bhakti, and pride in one's performance of bhakti. If these faults are hard to remove, even by bhakti in the form of association with great devotees, this is the result of offenses. There may be traces of offense from previous lives. This last point is a strong point made by Jiva Goswami in his writings. This is reference from Bhakti Sandarbha. So sequentially, the first of these is Kotilyam, or another similar word is Kutilata. which means crookedness. Crookedness, like a hook, is crooked. And the indication of the term crookedness is when entering into relationships, one presents oneself the way that you would like people to perceive you, rather than who you really are, what your intentions are. A Hito Pradesh example of this is an old lion. You ever seen a lion in a zoo? You've seen pictures of a lion. So when a lion gets really old, it's difficult for them to chase and capture their prey. So the Hitopadesh story says this old lion saw a passerby in the forest, and he called out to the passerby, "Could you please come here? I've taken a vow in my older life to give charity every day to someone. And I have a jewel. And I'd like to give this jewel in charity. Don't worry, I'm a vegetarian now. And I won't eat you. I won't bring any harm to you. So please come here and I'll give you this valuable jewel." And the person comes and they become the meal for the lion, because he was crooked. He was pretending something outside when inside there was something else. And when this crookedness becomes more severe, one can even delude oneself into not revealing one's own nature to oneself, being crooked within oneself about oneself. Jiva Goswami, in his writings, he gives the example of Duryodhana, pictured over here, when in Mahabharata, when Krishna came on his peace mission to Hastinapur to see if there could be no battle and keep the kingdom and just give the Pandavas 5 states or 5 cities or 5 villages, and the answer was no. So, but when Krishna came on that peace mission, Duryodhana, who was a cousin, just as the Pandavas were cousin, Duryodhana was also a cousin. He arranged a grand festive reception for Krishna and the members of the dynasty that were coming, and decorated the city, had musicians performing and brahmanas reciting prayers, and Krishna came, and he walked directly up to Krishna's chariot and spoke very kind words. "You're my dear cousin. How nice of you to have come to Hastinapur. Could you, I have great regard for you and all of those very dear to you. I love you." It's specific, he says, in Mahabharata. "So could you please come and honor our family, have meal at our home?" And Krishna said, "Having a meal at your home is not fit, because your cooking is filled with ill feelings towards the Pandavas." Then he says that there are 2 reasons, a nice rule, 2 reasons that one may eat. One is you're hungry, so you eat. Another is you may not be hungry, but out of love, because someone offers something, you may eat. And I'm not hungry, and I don't accept that you have love. You have simply animosity in your heart, and for that matter, there's no place in the whole of Hastinapur that is suited for me to have my meals other than one place at the home of Vidura. Because in Vidura's home, there's Vidura's love. And so Krishna went there and had his meal. Um, this crookedness is when it can it can develop to the stage where one is even dishonest with oneself, about oneself. So this is a symptom, the first of 5 symptoms of offense. And when offense becomes more severe, then faithlessness or ashraddha becomes manifest. And ashraddha is, even one has the opportunity for seeing the glories of the Lord or the devotee or the process of devotional service, one can't believe it. Again, Jiva Goswami gives the example of Duryodhana. When Krishna went into the assembly, various things were said and done, including Krishna blasting Duryodhana. And Duryodhana left in a huff, and they made a plan to kill Krishna with his associates. So when he came back, on the signal, Duryodhana's signal, the soldiers were charging at Krishna. Krishna manifested a partial universal form. And even Duryodhana saw the partial universal form of Krishna. He couldn't believe it. It's a trick. It's some mystical apparition. He's not divine at all. It's just some mystic power he has. Faithlessness. Another example given by Jiva Goswami is Hiranyakashipu. He saw the power of Prahlad in so many ways. The almighty, powerful Hiranyakashipu couldn't harm a hair on the head of his son. Even he tried in so many ways, by poison, by fire, by elephants, by serpents, threw him off a cliff. Prahlad was protected in every case. And then even when Hiranyakashipu saw the Lord himself, Lord Nrsingadev, he thought, this is an ordinary jiva, he has some power, but I have more power than anybody, I'm invincible. Ashraddha is another category of offense. And sometimes he ends this little section saying that sometimes a devotee may not exhibit that power. The example is Maharaj Parikshit. When that snake bird came to bite him, he didn't do something or exhibit some power to check the snake bird. Rather, the snake bird bit him, and as was predicted by the little Brahmana, the body of Maharaj Parikshit instantly burst into flames. So although the external power was not exhibited, the internal glory of his devotion was very clear to everyone. He was completely unmoved. So when one has made offense and has come to the stage of ashraddha, then the position of a devotee, or the devotion within that devotee, or the Supreme Lord, cannot be detected. This is just review. This is symptoms or evidence that offense has been committed. And when it becomes more acute, a long Sanskrit phrase, Bhagavan nishtha chavakastu antarabhinivesha. Internal absorption in things that destroy our nishtha in Bhagavan. Bhagavan nishtha chavakas. This abhinivesh means absorption. And antar abhinivesh means internal absorption. So internal absorption is something that destroys our concentration or our relationship with Bhagavan. Jiva Goswami gives the example, very interesting example, of Bharat. A nice painting of Bharat Maharaj, where after ruling his kingdom for a long time, he went to the forest to achieve spiritual perfection in devotion. He was a devotee. He was a very elevated devotee. According to scripture, he was on the platform of Bhava Bhakti. But in his previous lifetime, he had made some very serious offense. And as a result of that serious offense, there was something lingering in his heart. And that something lingering in his heart caused him to consciously leave his devotional practice that he went to the forest to perfect, and instead became attached to the deer instead of to the Supreme Lord. And he actually became practically mad in that absorption in the deer. So this is directly a translation of a verse from that section of the Bhagavatam, 5th canto. His heart, put in bold letters, his heart afflicted by unfulfilled desire. Bharat fell from his practice of yoga, from his detachment from material enjoyment achieved by bhakti, and even from his worship of the Lord, by the Lord's special arrangement of prarabdha karma through the appearance of the young deer. So what's prarabdha karma? Prarabdha karma means reactions that are happening right now. There are some that aren't happening right now. They're dormant, in a seed state, or they're beginning to fructify, or they're just about mature. Prarabdha karma means it's happening right now. Brick is falling on your head, or whatever it is. Prarabdha karma. So the prarabdha karma was the manifestation of the deer. Because of his previous karma, here's the result of his previous karma. The deer and the situation where he took care of the deer. And Jiva Goswami explains that prarabdha karma isn't going to block bhakti, because bhakti will eradicate the prarabdha karma. But because he left bhakti, that was not due to the deer, it was due to his previous offense in a previous life. And so it was lingering there. And we gave this example of deleted files in your computer. It's a very nice example. When you use a computer, you can store files in different places, and then you can delete the file, and it goes into the trash bin. But when it goes into the trash bin, it's not actually deleted from your computer. You just can't access that file the same way that you used to. And if you want, there's a little notice, more or less, that says, if you want, you can put me back and you can access me freely. Just click and it goes back. Restore back onto your computer. So the tendency for material attraction was in the trash bin by the power of bhakti. That file was deleted, but it was still on his hard drive. And due to that offense that he had committed previously, it went back onto he accessed it. His heart afflicted by unfulfilled desire. So bhakti has, now what does that mean? Bhakti has the power to take far away our affinity for matter and our attraction for temporary things, and clear our path for spiritual perfection. Even if you have those objects around you, you can be, we discussed this earlier, you can be Mars Yudhisthira and have wealth in your kingdom that rivals that of heaven. Or Ambarish Maharaj, whose wealth, the opulence of his kingdom was like that of Vaikuntha, but not affected by it. Bhakti has that power. Not be agitated by such things, wealth or the opposite sex. One can just be fixed in devotion to the personality of Godhead and not disturbed by this or that, the presence of something or the absence of something. One can be completely pacified and peaceful in any circumstance. But when offense is made, that power of bhakti can become blocked, just like clouds can block the power of the sun. That's what happened with Bharat Maharaj. Jiva Goswami gives one other example, and that of Gajendra. Gajendra, before he became Gajendra, was King Indradumna. And King Indradumna had offended Agastya Muni. And the explanation given by Jiva Goswami was the offense to Agastya Muni was due to a past offense that he had made. It was just reoccurring. And it became very severe. This time he became an elephant, but then he explains when he became an elephant, his bhakti wasn't gone, because bhakti can't be destroyed by anything material. It's eternal. Devotion is eternal. So even in that body of an elephant, his devotion for the personality of Godhead, circumstantially at least, there's this crocodile chomping on his leg, he became so absorbed in the personality of Godhead, he was liberated. But the ignoring of Agastya was due to a prior offense. That was the cause. There's just two more, and then we're done with our review. And then we'll just wind up this whole discussion. A further advancement of this condition of offensiveness is bhakti saitilyam, laziness, moroseness, lack of interest in performing devotional activity. The illustration indicates even one may not be able to recognize what offense has caused that condition. If that person gets some special mercy from a devotee or directly from the Lord, that weak person can be rescued. And then in this condition, one manifests a very self-centered mentality. It's just symptomatic that compassion is replaced for my own well-being, my wants, my needs, my stuff, and devotional attitude becomes slackened, weak in spiritual practices, even practically losing taste in devotional service altogether. The final one is classic. It's also very interesting. Sva-bhakti adikrita manitvam, where one boastfully brags and feels great pride in what one has achieved in devotional life even. So the example given is Daksha. When Daksha offended Lord Shiva very, very seriously, part of his offense to Lord Shiva, who is by far his superior, he was boasting about all that he had achieved in his life as a spiritualist. And as a result, he very seriously offended Lord Shiva, and later he had a bad experience. He lost his head. Lord Shiva, Virabhadra, chopped his head off as a reaction for his offense to Lord Shiva. Then he went before, with a goat's head, he went before Lord Shiva and pleaded with him for forgiveness. He received forgiveness for his offense, but the tendency to do the offense again continued in his next lifetime. And his next lifetime he offended Narada Muni in the very same way, bragging about all of his accomplishments, the different types of yajnas that he had done, this one, that one. I'm a great spiritualist and you're a pretender, a so-called renunciate. I curse you. So we ended with this. There's a remedy for offenses indicated in Bhakti Sandarbha by Jiva Goswami, this position of humility, holding a regard for Bhagavan, Bhakti, and Bhakta in a position of great humility. The word that he uses is dinatva. He likes using this syllable at the end. I forget what it's called. What tva means, that having the property of, or somethingness, like calmness or peacefulness or kindness. Tva means having the quality of, or ness. The having the quality of humility, dina. And you're going to hear some more about this in this part 4, where introspection and honest assessment of one's position helps one to then enter into conscientiously practiced devotional practices, devotional service. The phrase namaha is defined in Padma Purana. I like this very much. Ma represents ahankar, or false ego, and na represents negation of ahankar, or false ego. Thus, by uttering namaha, one negates one's independent attitude. The jiva is dependent on the Lord. He lives with dependence. Therefore, one should completely reject the idea of accomplishing by one's own capacity. Nothing is left to be accomplished by the ability of the Lord. Consigning one's body to the Lord, one should serve him. Namaha there's the core message. And there's the very nice painting here of the 4 Kumaras inspecting and very carefully taking shelter of the lotus feet of Lord Narayana. They're his very dear devotees. So that's review, part 3. And part 4 is raising the question about being, of conscious sadhana, basically, the antidote for anarthas, those clouds in the heart that arise from offense. What's the antidote for them? So, nice little chart. When you're doing your devotional practices or devotional service, where's your consciousness? Is it present? Or are you worrying about the past, or lamenting about the past, or worrying about the future? So the indication is, this is Jiva Goswami continuing on with his Bhakti Sandarbha. It's very nice. What's essential is having conscious practice, where we're chanting or doing our service or worship or whatever it is, and it's not mechanical, it's regular, but it's we're consciously, in a humble mood, participating in these activities. So I'm going to read one verse, short verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. I like it very much. Canto 3, Chapter 29. This is Kapila Dev. Kapila Dev is an incarnation of the Supreme Lord who appears at the beginning of Satya Yuga. He's the son of Devahuti. Devahuti is the daughter of Swayambhuva Manu. and Devahuti and Kardama Muni. Kardama Muni is a direct son of Lord Brahma. So Kardama Muni and Devahuti have as their son Lord Kapila, and Lord Kapila is giving instructions to Devahuti in the process of devotional service. So at the beginning of this chapter, 29, Devahuti asks a question. Devotional service is pure? Because devotional service is not different than the Supreme Lord. Is it possible that that devotional service can be mixed with the modes of nature? And the answer is yes. Devotional service can be mixed with the modes of nature. And he describes then in devotional service mixed with passion what that looks like. Ignorance, passion, goodness, and unmixed devotional service, what that looks like. Then he describes what living a life in devotional service and transcendence is like. Then he describes that in 5 verses, basically a sadhana to get there, from mixed to unmixed. And this verse, number 18, is in that section. It's the final verse of that section. So here's the verse. Adhyatmika Anushravanam Nama Sankirtanach Chame Arjavena Arya Sangena Nirahankriyaya Tata. So there's 5 parts to this. Here's the first part, and the most important part. Adhyatmika Anushravanam. Shravana means to hear. Anushravanam, following the process of hearing. Adhyatmika, in this case, it means spiritual subject matters. Hearing spiritual subject matters from proper sources. This is Bhagavad Dharma. That's hearing spiritual subject matters. Krishna Katha, Hari Katha, hearing the messages of transcendence about the Supreme Lord and the process to approach Him. Hearing Shastra's spiritual topics with a certain focus. Then that focus is embedded within those messages is the description of the soul's natural position, and the covered condition of the soul, its qualities and faults. Hearing with the purpose of identifying through that illumination, the light, where inside, where are there qualities, where are there faults within the aspects of the subtle body, mind, intelligence, and false ego. What are those features? And then with the assistance of the other 4, one can then have the capacity or strength to overcome those faults and exercise the strengths, the doshas and gunas. So here's the 4. Nama Sankirtan, we know what that is, chanting of the holy name. Arjavena, straightforward behavior without diplomacy. Remember the Kotilium. So instead of the Kotilium, it's Arjavena, straightforward behavior. We discussed this Wednesday morning. Arya Sangena, Arya Sangha. Arya means, just like in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna speaks of to Arjuna, Anarya Jushtam Asvargyam. Arjuna, how has this non-Aryan behavior overcome you? You know the progressive values of life. Why are you lamenting like this? That an Aryan is one who is progressive. It's spiritually progressive. They understand the value of life and they're actively pursuing it. That's an Aryan. An Arya Sangena is the association of such persons. And with the injunction, there's a prohibition. That is, not taking intimate association of unwholesome pieces of persons. Or asat sangha, tyag. Giving up the association of unwholesome persons. And intimately associating with Arya persons. Vaishnav Sangha. And then nirahankriya. There's that ahankara again. False ego. So nirahankriya. Doing sadhana practice in that humble and meek mood. For those of you that were with us the very first day, you can remember we recited a verse from Chaitanya Charitamrita Antya Lila, chapter 8, text 71. It quotes Jiva Goswami, the very first part, where Jiva Goswami says that Krishna becomes attracted by someone who has in their heart is meek and humble. Whether they have, they're a famous person or a scholarly person or an accomplished, talented person or a very simple person. Krishna is attracted by that simplicity of heart. Like Sudama Brahman. By material standards, he was a pauper. But by spiritual standards, he had great love. Or Vidura. Vidura, by birth, was a Sudra. But Krishna preferred to be with Vidura than with the royal family, with opulent facilities. When Vidura's wife, she was so excited to be able to offer a meal to Krishna, but she was so poor, she gave him bananas, and she gave the banana skins instead of the bananas. She was just so excited to give something to Krishna. That's what that picture shows. So, but Krishna was happier to receive that than the most opulent of whatever it is that somebody could offer. Krishna becomes attracted by that simplicity and meekness and purity of heart. Whatever one's external position in the world may be. So, cultivating that humility consciously, so these four assist the first one. The first one is our practice of hearing and chanting. Just like we're doing right now. We're reading some verses from 3rd Canto Bhagavatam and something from Chaitanya Charitamrita and Mahabharata and Bharat Maharaj 5th Canto. We're hearing topics in relation to Krishna from Srimad Bhagavatam and the scriptures. So when doing like that, I'll just go through it one more time. It's hearing with the purpose, not just gathering information so we know more information, but looking inside ourselves. Not information gathering, but introspection. And that message, if we're looking in that way, that message will shine some light and help us understand about ourselves. The gunas and doshas, the qualities and faults that are within. And then on the strength of these other four, to work on eradicating the faults and utilizing and engaging the strengths with these four. It's a very nice verse. It's sadhana description by Kapila Dev, how to come to the stage of unmixed devotion. It's right on our topic. This is a review point that we discussed in the second part, but in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, right toward the very beginning, he describes what abhyasa or sadhana is. Abhyasa means practice, and sadhana means spiritual cultivation. So sadhana or abhyasa has these 4 characteristics. Dirgha means prolonged. Dirgha kal, prolonged over a long period of time. Nirantarya or nairantarya, uninterruptedly. And satkara, with reverence. So these are 3 elements for something to be qualify as sadhana. Practice becomes firmly established when it has been cultivated uninterruptedly and with devotion for a long period of time. And this is a slide that just says the same thing. Conscious sadhana as opposed to mechanical sadhana. So here's the same. Dirgha kal, long period of time. Don't depend on your own power, your own capacity. It's not like academic work. Academic work, we're all trained up. Just apply yourselves. We hear from our parents or superiors and pat on the head. You're smart, you can do it. Just work hard and get the grade, and right? Get the grade and you can do it. And if you don't get the good enough grade, hey, what happened? You slacked off. You can do it. Go out and you can do it. So we do it. That's how we're all accustomed to that. This is different. Don't depend on your own capacity. It's a descending process. Sadhana is a descending process. Without break or without cessation. And very important, without this third one, it's not a spiritual practice. Some reverential mood or with faith that by doing this, I can come closer to Krishna, closer to the goal. This is another message, just the visuals are a little different. According to Vedanta Sutra, Jiva Goswami refers to this. Little reminder for those that attended previously. Vedanta Sutra is sutras are like little compressed, tight aphorisms, statements that have lots of meaning and just like really packed together. So there's 4 parts, and it's a summary of all the Vedas. And there's 4 parts. The first 2 parts deal with the source of emanation of all things and the relationship with that source. Sambandha, relationship. The third one deals with acting in that relationship, or abhideya. And the fourth one is, what's the result of acting in that relationship? Prayojana. This is the first verse in the Prayojana section, like, the goal, the perfection of spiritual life. The very first aphorism is avriti adikarana. Avriti is repetition. Adi karana means causation or doing something. Adikarana, avriti. Repeat again and again. Repeat again and again. Repeat again and again. So somebody questions, should there be no repetition? Because we've heard, like specifically with the holy name, there's all the glories of the holy name found in Scripture and so powerful. It's those merciful, this and that. Just chant once, and you should see Krishna. Should happen like that. Just like by performance of Agni Stoma Yagya, when it once attained Swargaloka, according to the Vedic system. So then there's this additional phrase, avritir asakrit upadesha. This is review for those of you that were with us. And avriti means repetition. Avatir, asakrit, over a long period of time, a duration of time where one is repeating devotional practice. Why? Because scriptures say it must be done many times, asakrit. And the example is given in Chandogya Upanishad. There's a speaker, Svetaketu, 9 times Tattvamasi, 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 9 times. Why do you have to repeat something so many times? Because we're covered. We're covered by offenses. We're covered by, like clouds are covering the sky, so the heat and the light of the sun doesn't come through the clouds of the sky. So repetition is necessary. The example is given in scripture that just like there's a stalk that has rice grain inside, and the thrashing of the rice is done as many times as it takes that the grain of rice becomes loosened from the stalk. That's how many times. So when the heart is infested with contamination, it must be done many times. The very next aphorism, really short, lingach cha. Repetition is required because of indications in Scripture. And Scripture recommends it because of the existence of offenses. So that's one of the antidotes, is you continue regular practice, but with these ways that where there's satkara, there's some faith. It's conscious practice. Here's a statement from Bhakti Sandarbha. We're almost done. Because most people are inclined to commit offenses, they should perform spiritual activities again and again. That they who offend the Lord's holy name should chant the holy name again and again is explained in the following words from Padma Purana. Quote, the chanting of Hare Krishna is recommended for persons who commit offenses because if they continue chanting, they will gradually chant offenselessly. Even if in the beginning one chants with offenses, one will become free from such offenses by chanting again and again. Padma Purana. Nam Aparad Bhajana Stotra. How to overcome offenses. Continuous chanting. The specific value of this repetition is you're removing, without reading all the text, you're removing sanskars, the bad impressions, and making good ones in their place. Gradually, the bad ones, the sinful or offensive ones, are changed. And this new set of sanskars, the good ones, become your nature. Prabhupada made it really simple. He said, you practice at something, and it becomes second nature. It's really simple. I heard him say that so many times, I kept wondering, what's the point that he's making? So we're conditioned souls. By our conditioning, let's just say somebody, by conditioning, has a tendency to become angry. Maybe you know somebody that has a tendency to become angry. So a recommendation for such person is practice forgiveness. Bhishma Dev says it right in Bhishma Parva section of Mahabharata. The antidote for anger is forgiveness. So you just practice forgiveness and practice forgiveness and practice forgiveness and practice, and that replaces the anger. Becomes second nature. Second nature replaces the conditioned nature, etc. The difference between just practicing something that's forgiveness as opposed to anger is the fragrance, the lingering odor of anger may remain. That deleted file may be in the trash bin. And due to offense, then it may go back onto your hard drive, and you access it and it takes over your life again. So bhakti has the power to completely remove. So the practice of bhakti removes completely, even to the very root, such tendencies. That's the power of bhakti when we take up this practice. We're almost done. If repetition helps remove the tendency for offenses, how is it that in Chaitanya Charitamrita we quoted something that one may go on like many lifetimes chanting where you haven't freed yourself from offense, and it may take long time. And the answer is, it won't work if there isn't this satkara quality. It will continue lifetime after lifetime. So this is very important, this satkara. That's confidence or faith or conscious performance, not mechanical performance again and again, but conscious performance. If we fail to confront our offensive nature and habitually continue practicing sadhana with offenses, then even many lifetimes cannot relieve us from offenses. So the operative element, along with repetition, is this satkara. With reverence, consciously take up your practices. So stay protected from committing offenses. We don't stay away from opportunities that may cause us to get into a conflict or something or other. We take responsibility for our consciousness. Having respect for bhakta and bhakti and Bhagavan. And in the course of the execution of our devotional service, we'll find in life, it's just part of life, there's problems. The goal is not avoid problems, the avoid is to avoid offenses. And we discussed the elephant offense, the offending of a saintly person. Most offensive in all of the offenses is to be disrespectful or disregard or denigrate the sincerity of another's devotion. Big problem spiritually. So now what to do? If we see such tendencies exist, there's two essential qualities according to our acharyas. This is Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Simplicity and determination. Simplicity, again, is this opposite of crookedness. Being straightforward. If you have deficiencies, don't hide your deficiencies. Don't flaunt them, but don't pretend to others or to yourself they're not there. Be straightforward in your dealings. At the same time, remain very determined. Rupa Goswami teaches about determination. Determination has a lot to do with your being convinced in the process and the persons who are guiding you in that process of devotional service. There's a picture of Bhaktivinoda Thakur at the bottom, where he's writing in one of his literatures, we cannot please Krishna just by accepting diksha and executing the various limbs of bhakti. Only those who have unwavering faith in exclusive devotion can satisfy Krishna. Those who have developed such faith accept the path of sadhana bhakti with great determination. And again, determination is that you have confidence in the process itself. Simplicity and determination resulting from an exclusive desire for bhakti are the natural characteristics of unalloyed devotees. So, I hope it's clear. Simplicity and determination. Simplicity, straightforwardness, not duplicity, not crookedness, not deception, just straightforward dealings. And determination. determination to continue following this merciful process. Bhaktisiddhanta, his son and in the disciplic succession, Prabhupada's spiritual master, indicates this word saralata, or simplicity, is the first qualification of a Vaishnava, whereas duplicity or cunning behavior is a great offense against the principles of devotional service. A Brahmana proves his simplicity by opening his heart and speaking the truth, even if it hampers his own self-interest. This is taken directly from Bhaktisiddhanta's writings. Whenever there's a lack of simplicity, one should know that there's no question of Brahminical culture. So, introspection. Through this hearing of Scripture, look inside. It's a light that illumines the heart. It's intended with that purpose. We can see in the light of Scripture who we are, at least the coverings of the soul. Eventually, then we can factually see the soul. See if there's crookedness, for example, when we're doing something to get something, to get some appreciation, to get some attention, to get some money, to get some fame, to get something. This is the first sign, according to Jiva Goswami, in these 5 symptoms. Crookedness is the first result of improper application of spiritual practices. So look inside and see if that's existing. When we're chanting, we can self-examine. Are we becoming, over a period of time, more crooked or more straightforward? Are we becoming sharp in our ability in seeing our problems in spiritual practices? Or are we actually becoming more covered and unable to see deficiencies in our spiritual practices? Are we developing a more humble mood, working on our shortcomings? Or are we becoming more defensive about our position, rationalizing our activities? So I call this Brahminical work. It's like, if you're applying for a college or applying for a job. How old are you? Huh?
9.
Behind you.
12.
12. Okay. One day you'll be making an application for college. They're not going to ask you, how much work have you done in this department? They'll ask you what's your GPA, what were your SAT scores, and all that kind of thing. Or a job application, what's on your resume? They're not going to ask you, how much work have you done to make your heart pure? How much work have you done to avoid crookedness? How much work have you done to see things that are spiritual through the lens of simplicity and humility? They're not going to ask you those things. We're rewarded for the other things. And so we work hard for those other things. And we're complacent more in these areas. Unless a little light goes on and something that says, there's something wrong with this system. There's nothing wrong with doing academic work nicely, but there's something wrong if that's the system of achievement and reward for achievement. If that's all there is. Certainly someone that, have you asked yourself, what's the goal of life? What's the ultimate mission of the human form of life? If you were to ask that question, what would you write an essay about? I mean, they're not going to ask you those questions. You get the idea. So it takes like some inner motivation, some inner contemplation. Look within and take that responsibility in the association of others who are similarly doing that. And be successful as you can be in the field of your endeavors, whatever that might be. But do that in pure consciousness, so that the purpose of the human life is fulfilled. Calling out to Krishna requires conscious sadhana, and these two elements, simplicity and determination, are required. Krishna protects one who tries to protect oneself from committing offenses. Same in relation to our chanting, whether it's our activity or the process of sadhana, chanting the holy name. Krishna will protect us if we strive to become free from offenses. Krishna's help will be there. That's a nice slide, isn't it? That's it. Anatomy of Anarthas. So any discussion or questions?
Thank you so much for the wonderful class. I really like this topic. Maharaj, the topic simplicity,
Yeah.
straightforwardness.
Yeah.
It seems to be difficult in practical application because most of them whom we deal with,
She's not using the microphone because the battery seems to come and go.
no, it's
No, you can come in front, ma'am. That's fine. You can speak.
There's feedback from the speaker?
No, good, ma'am. She's working.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
whenever I'm dealing with other devotees, to be straightforward, I have seen so many people with duplicity, too many people. It is come to a certain point that I think being that way is better, because those people are being more honored and more given in terms of everything, identified as better person, even though they are.
You don't believe what you're saying.
I don't believe it.
I know you don't believe it.
But
because I know you.
The world is like, I'm like in a dilemma.
No, you're not. Stand by values that you believe in, and be the example of that which you would like the world to be. That's like something that, as your son reaches teenage, you're going to be telling him. And, teenagers don't like it when there's, falsity in adults. Right? Like, I've heard teenagers say, Mom and Dad, they're expecting me to be Prahlad Maharaj, and they want to be Hiranyakashipu. So don't be duplicitous. And if you're around people that are whatever the world is like, whether it's in the community of devotees or outside the community of devotees or wherever it is. Be that which you that which matches your convictions of the way that one should be. And if somebody becomes honored for their duplicity or whatever it is, it's water off a duck's back. I'm going to be what I believe, So the difference between don't go the other direction, off the center of the road and be like in your face, kind of. I'm going to be straightforward, so blah, kind of. We need to be considerate of time, place, and circumstance and sensibilities of other people, not in the manner of duplicity, but in a manner of dignity and respect and decency. So, and if others in the workplace or in the marketplace or in the temple or in the wherever your life may lead you, just be a person of integrity. What the values that you hold, and you do that. Whatever else others do, that's their decisions.
Sometimes they do so much. You can see it on their face that they are saying that.
Whatever it may be, whatever it may be,
Going bad.
whatever it may be, be the example of what you'd like the world to be. It's a very simple principle to live by. And just stay there. And others are going to do whatever they're going to do. They're making their choices, and their path is according to. Who knows what any given individual, what pressure they've been under to perform. And now they've learned to perform, and they're performing. Maybe your upbringing with your family and whatever. You have another set of values, or somehow inside you, that however it got there, there's another set of values. Not just achieve and strive and get recognition. It's be a person of integrity. So be a person of integrity, and don't fault others for otherwise. Who knows? Again, who knows what pressure they've been under to get to that? Their psychological makeup. If they can experience someone that also accomplishes many things, and they're inside, they're very soft and humble. I'll just, here's something from the material world. There's a book called From Good to Great, or something like that, where an author, along with a team of people that were hired by him, they studied Fortune 500 companies, some number of them, over a period of a decade or so. And they're all good, and then some became great. And what made the difference between good and great? And they found the great, the chief, the CEO, had two main qualities: humility and compassion. Now, that's not what you normally think of as, a Fortune 500 CEO. So they're good. But the ones that went from good to great, compassion and humility. Compassion is that the inspiration that was driving them is they wanted to do something for others, not just get a better score in school, get the better SAT score than the one next to you, or whatever, all those patterns of behavior that we learned, conditioned and conditioned and conditioned and pushed. Another value. Do something that's going to be meaningful and beneficial for others. And do so in a humble manner. You can take feedback from others and improve yourself. Or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Have teams of people. It's not just you. It's you work together. That's great. Different, better than good. And whatever is being recognized in the world out there, or the world in the devotee community are persons who are coming from conditioned life and entering into spiritual life and bringing some baggage of conditioning with them. So don't fault them. Be an example of what you value is. And stay with it. Stay with it and improve it. Refine it through sadhana bhakti and good association and good hearing and chanting. You'll be a better agent of change if that's your consciousness than you're disturbed by another person who doesn't have that, higher motivation. You know better than they are. In Prabhupada's language. You follow? I'll just say, if you're going to be blunt about it, Prabhupada was blunt about it. There's a very long story. I won't do the long story part, but Bhakti Tirtha Swami was grew up in the ghettos of Cleveland, black-bodied American and African American, and he was going to college at a time when it was just after the civil rights movement, and Ivy League schools were giving free tuition to qualified ghetto dwellers, African Americans. So he got a full scholarship to Princeton University. Sometime when he was at Princeton University, he got a book. He was the valedictorian of his class, and he was the president of his class. He was elected the president of the graduating class at Princeton University. Student government president, a leader. And brilliant. And he was more his future was paved with whatever you want to call it. It was a time when somebody like him would have been very wealthy, very famous, very prominent person. He left that to become a devotee because he was moved by what he read in Prabhupada's books, and then he met Prabhupada, and that was it. Then he associated with devotees, and then he saw, like what you're describing, he saw this racial discrimination amongst devotees. So that hurt him deeply, because this is a spiritual organization, and why do they have, you're not this body, but people think that you're this body, and they treat you that way. I mean, he was very sensitive to that. So he met with Prabhupada and came to pour out his heart and to say, Prabhupada, in the Hare Krishna movement, in ISKCON, there's racial discrimination. And Prabhupada's reply to him was, that is not very good, but if you're disturbed by it, then you're no better than they are. You're on the platform of thinking you're the body, as they're on the platform of thinking they're the body. Discriminating against black people. You're no better than they are. So fix your own problem. How can you fix the problem if you're not above the problem? If you're, reacting to the problem. So there's a difference between acting and reacting. Act in Krishna consciousness, and then you can be an agent for lifting consciousness of people who, like you and me and every one of us in this room, got a lot of pressure in the course of becoming, growing up and becoming, quote, successful, to become successful by that paradigm. Now, there's something inside that person or those persons who you're thinking of, or, that there's something inside them that says that I don't like that paradigm. I want the spiritual paradigm. But they're carrying this other baggage with them. So be compassionate. Be an agent to help them go beyond it. By example and by your own purity. I don't know of a better solution. And what can any one of us do? What can you? You're a little person. And I'm a little person. We're all little persons. But if we share the collective consciousness of striving for purity and strive for purity, despite the circumstances that are running contrary to that purity, we continue to strive for purity. We can be a force or an agent for change, of lifting the circumstance up. And to do it alone, it's overwhelming. Therefore, we need the association of others who have a similar purpose and a value and are striving in that way. And hear very carefully and make your own heart pure first. You asked for it.
The follow-up question to that, Maharaj, is
Okay.
I have identified this before, that this, I don't want to look into myself first. There could be somewhere that feature in myself. Is it when we see that person acting, just to even identify that, we are not, what I'm trying to say is, we see somebody acting like that and we think about it, and again myself, I think, analyze myself, that's not the way I should go. It could be, see good in them instead of bad in them. But even for a minute, when I saw that duplicity, is that considered as an offense?
No. There's a difference between discrimination, understanding what's what, and having a negative attitude, disrespect. It's a distinction between the soul and the covering of the soul. The neutrality is, that's a very interesting mode of nature. According to Bhagavad Gita, that's a combination of this mode and that mode. Then you're not judging the person or disrespecting the person. You're just seeing, Bhagavad Gita in living color. And now, really, there's the soul. I don't want to lose sight of the soul. And the bhakti, whatever degree is there, toward Krishna in this particular soul. So what can I do to fan the spark of bhakti? Knowing what the covering is. How can I be the agent to help that person get closer to Krishna? Because that's why they're here. They'd be somewhere else, competing and being duplicitous if it wasn't for that added element of attraction for Krishna. You with me?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Right by the door. Okay.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
In connection to session 3 and session 4, you were giving examples of Bharat Maharaj and Gajendra. And the reason Bharat Maharaj got attached to deer is because of a previous offense.
Yeah.
And it's a two-part question. What was the offense that...
Doesn't say.
Doesn't say. And then earlier towards the end of session 4...
Right, let me just add. From my experience with Jiva Goswami, some of the statements he makes are deductive. In this case, it's not that prarabdha karma has overwhelmed bhakti. Not bhakti overwhelms prarabdha karma. So it's not that, therefore, deductively, it's an offense, a previous offense, and it's deducted from the statement, an unfulfilled desire, right from the verse. He doesn't indicate what that offense was.
And maybe you answered my second question there, because towards the end of session 4, we were saying by performing bhakti, all the offenses, because bhakti is more powerful, all the offenses are nullified by doing conscious sadhana.
The potency is there for that to happen. How quickly it happens is up to Krishna, because he's the controller of his energy.
So then, what went wrong with Bharat Maharaj or Indradyumna Maharaj?
Because
there?
he held on to that attachment that was there from the offense. The power, the end result is he became a deer, and then he became Jad Bharat, and he was a perfected being. He didn't go back and pick up the deleted file again. The potency of bhakti was such. But in this case, he consciously chose. You don't have to consciously choose because of some offense. You can consciously choose otherwise, but he did. That, the opportunity was there, the prarabdha karma opportunity was there in the form of the deer, and he chose, prompted by that offense. So the offense lingers. Bhakti has the power to remove that. But there has to be willingness. That's the sincerity factor, or satkara factor. We have to really want that. We have to want our relationship with Krishna, because otherwise it's not going to happen. However many times we chant, or however many lifetimes we chant or engage in service. You have to be clear what you want. If you're not clear what you want, that's what's going to happen. It's another lifetime of lack of clarity. Okay.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Okay. Yes, behind you.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, I have two questions, Maharaj. Is it the right statement to say offenses don't destroy bhakti, but only destroy one's capacity to temporarily perform?
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, I would just modify the second destroy to minimize the effect of, or the attraction for.
My second question is on crookedness, Maharaj. You mentioned about openly sharing one's heart, one's deficiencies. So I was trying to understand to the extent one would open up, is it like a person should be like an open book?
No, you should be using a phrase that Nityananda Pran likes. A little common sense is helpful. So there's persons there's circles of confidentiality. I disclose with persons who I know are confidential, capable. I'm not going to deceive the other people. I may not disclose everything to other people, but there are certain persons who, my life is an open book. I don't conceal or hide anything. I need those relationships. And then other persons, and then other persons and other persons. In some cases, it's like Bhaktivinoda Thakur speaks of a grahastha in the workplace. Then being socially polite is expected. How are you today? How was your weekend? Something, something. Just social niceties. But then, you're not disclosing, I have this important decision to make about something or other, and what do you think I should do? Disclosing your heart in confidence. You do that with some people, and Way in the back.
Krishna Maharaj, one question.
You got to come closer, because this technology doesn't work around doorways. Now you can use your microphone. Go ahead.
My question is from one Bhagavatam question, Maharaj. That is, I was reading about Lord Indra beheading Vishwarupa.
Lord Indra did what?
Beheading Vishwarupa. His
He
spiritual
beheaded
master.
Vishwarupa, okay.
Yeah. And Vishwarupa has got 3 heads.
Yes, he did.
Yeah. So, but when we think of Lord Brahma, we think of him as one entity, like, it's one Atma. But when Lord Indra beheaded Vishwarupa, 2 partridges, 2 birds, 3 birds came out of his heads.
No. That's not what the Bhagavatam says. It's not.
It says like that.
I read it. I'm very familiar with that section of the Bhagavatam.
I remember 2 partridge and one another type of bird.
No. I'm sorry.
I will go back and read it.
Yes. Okay, she has a question. Radhaduti.
This is regarding utilitarian mentality.
Utilitarian mentality.
In devotee relationships, especially like my circumstances, staying
I
alone.
thought you were talking about yourself.
A lot of times it happens that I try to depend on devotees for certain things, try to reach out, seek help.
That's good.
But at times, a lot of times it happens that I don't try enough from my side, but just make a call and reach out. Does that kind of edging towards a utilitarian mentality?
No. It's relationship. Now, let's be honest. We're into being honest today. Our situation is mixed. We're not yet pure. So to one degree or another degree, there may be, seeking advantages for my self-interest, my selfish interest. But it depends on how you see the person, and that will also be determined by how you see yourself. So when there's because we're dependent beings, and Krishna has provided some association of his devotees, and they're representatives of Krishna, and I'm turning to Krishna. If I'm turning to Krishna in the form of his representatives, that's not selfish. It's intelligent. Now back to the reality is it's mixed. So I'm not going to see that person who's representing Krishna, a resource connected to Krishna, as a resource connected to Krishna. It's just rather, to some degree, I'm going to see as something that is going to help me in my self-centeredness and my needs. So it's not black or white, it's gray, in shades of gray. So the cultivation part is, count to 10, take a deep breath, step back, take a look at, think of Krishna, and see the resources that Krishna has provided, and then I can reach out to resources that Krishna has provided, realizing Krishna is just on the other side of that resource, or right behind that resource. It's Krishna. And I wish to connect with Krishna. Like that. So then we cultivate in that way. But fitting in with, the first one at the top, are we becoming more crooked or more straightforward? Are we becoming sharpen our ability in seeing our problems in spiritual practices, or more covered and so forth. So this is not an exercise of obsession or beating ourselves up. It's an exercise of it's brahminical work, becoming closer to the position of a transparent, unobstructed relationship with Krishna. And then we can see Krishna. And Krishna will be attracted enough to show himself to us. That's how it works. We're not going to see Krishna until he shows himself. He'll reveal himself in different ways, however he wants. And our eagerness is that relationship with Krishna as we progress in devotion. Yeah, follow up.
No, second question on crookedness. Does, maybe you already said it, but I didn't catch. Does crookedness means explicitly intending with a cheating mentality, or could it come out from some fear, like one may succumb to a
Sure.
fear of rejection?
It's more having to do with intention. So crookedness has to do with intention, and the other. Can it come from a position of fear? Well, yes, but it's less crooked. Because the intention in that case is just self-preservation. But I know some people. I know some people that, out of self-preservation, they present themselves in a certain way that enables them to feel safe. Like this other remark of people that are duplicitous. It's, in part it's because they're insecure. And that gives them the sense of security. And I'm big, or I'm important, or I did it. I'm thinking of an individual that was bragging, "Oh, I can do that." And then I asked him, "Well, can you do that?" He said, he no reply. Well, I can't do that. I just wanted some recognition that I could do that because anyway. It took some honesty to make that response. But, the fear of rejection or the fear of whatever the fears are. So it can come from that place. And again, we can deceive ourselves. Not only consciously deceive others. What's the cure? Cultivating these things on the strength of those four things. I think we're done. Okay. Thank you very much. Prabhupada ki jai.